Now, that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus." He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going further. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while we talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks, Marianne. Good morning. Lovely to see you all. Happy Easter. Well, are you going to be travelling this Easter? If you're going to be travelling, I do hope that you don't have any Google Maps disasters. I had a near Google Map disaster just the other day. I was in Marsden Park and we wanted to see where the quickest way to IKEA was, tap that in, and the instructions that we got from Google Maps were to the IKEA at Rhodes. So not so helpful, right? But that was not nearly as bad as this family who had a Google Maps disaster and landed in the outback for 2 days. Channel 9 reported that Google Maps took them off track and they were stranded in the outback on a dirt road away from the sealed highway, no wireless, no nothing, remote area. The dad said, "I honestly thought we were going to die." There was no mobile reception with one bottle of water to share. See, we trust these things, don't we? When we trust these things, we open ourselves up to their flaws, don't we? The flaws of Google Maps include young teenage boys who put fake Aldis in the middle of fields. That happened in Wales. You know, like when we're opening ourselves up to these technologies, we're opening ourselves up to their flaws too, aren't we? It's funny, we can that was the place in Wales. Do you know our Welsh people? You recognise where that is? No? Okay. That was the fake Aldi. Sorry, you're all looking at the screen. No, there's nothing surprising there. But we joke about misplaced trust, don't we? But when misplaced trust involves people or finances or anything important in our future, that is not all that funny at all, is it? When we trust our financial planners or our solicitors or our accountants or our mechanics, we're entrusting our futures to them. And as a result, we're opening ourselves up to their flaws. The minute we trust Google Maps or people or services is the same minute that we're opening ourselves up to their flaws. We're opening ourselves up to our trust being misplaced. The hopes that we're opening ourselves up to our hope being unrealised. As Marianne read that passage for us, you see that it starts out with a couple of people who feel like their hope has been misplaced in Jesus. You don't expect the Bible to cover stories like this, do you? Where people are disappointed with Jesus. And so just this morning, we're going to go on a short journey with these travellers. We're going to start with them in this place of disappointment. And then we're going to go secondly to see how their misplaced trust is actually reshaped around Old Testament expectations. And then thirdly, we're going to see how their trust is transformed when they meet the living Jesus. So let's start here with the gloominess of misplaced trust. We've got two travellers, right? It sounds like the beginning of a joke, but it's not. You've got two travellers, and they're turning their back on the Jerusalem where Jesus has just been executed. And they're walking away. They're walking to a place called Emmaus, which is about the length of the City to Surf fun run. Has anyone here done the City to Surf fun run? Yeah, a few people. Okay, so halfway through the City to Surf, you're faced with Heartbreak Hill. Do you remember that, those who have run it? Okay, it's about halfway through. It's a hill that goes for 1,200 metres. That's a long way. It's not brutally steep, but it's just steep enough to turn your early joy from the run into just sucking your energy away. And so it's often where it turns from walking to running, from running to walking, from walking to complaining. That's what happens on Heartbreak Hill. Now, it's not a dissimilar experience to what these two travellers are going through, these two disappointed fans of Jesus. All that they'd hoped for in Jesus has actually come to nothing now that he has died. And so they're walking what is, I'm going to metaphorically call the Heartbreak Hill. And they're joined by a third traveller. Again, it sounds like a joke, but it's not. They're joined by a third traveller, a fellow traveller who they're astonished to hear doesn't know what's happened in Jerusalem. This third walker, as the reader know to be Jesus himself, right? The one who died a few days earlier, confirmed by professional executioners, the Romans. We know he's the fellow traveller, but for whatever reason, God has stopped their eyes from recognising this third traveller as Jesus. And so this fellow traveller looks at the faces of the two, at Cleopas and his partner, perhaps his wife, and their faces are downcast. They're gloomy, they're mournful. It's what verse 17 tells us. So it's not as if Cleopas and his partner are just casually walking along, chewing the fat, catching up on goss. No, their walk has got a mood to it. The conversation has got a vibe. I wonder if you can imagine their downcast faces as they walk up Heartbreak Hill. They are gloomy, but to them, this new guy, this fellow traveller, honestly seems pretty dumb. Their mood is not improved by his really ignorant question. I just love their gloomy question in response. I think this might be my new favourite question in the whole Gospel of Luke. I mean, there are some pretty good questions in the Gospel of Luke. Like Jesus asks, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? That's a pretty good question, right? Jesus asks, who do you say that I am, in the same chapter? That's a pretty good question. In fact, that might be the most important question you ever have to answer, because it defines your eternity. And that's the question we'll spend more time with in the course that Mark mentioned earlier. Okay, so this question might not be the best question in the Gospel of Luke, but it is certainly the snarkiest and the gloomiest. Have a listen to their question. It's verse 18 in your passage there. If you've got your Bibles open there, verse 18. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" I love the question. It just drips with sarcasm. It's such a grumpy question. They're so clearly upset by all that's happened in Jerusalem to the person named Jesus. And it's like they've got all the pieces of the puzzle, but the pieces just don't fit together. And so they begin to explain to this really dumb guy what's happened in Jerusalem. Verse 19, he was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. And here's why they're so upset. Verse 21, but we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. What is more, it's the third day since all this took place. That's why they're grumpy. The treatment their hero receives, and therefore what they don't receive as a result of his death. That's why they're gloomy. See, they've got all the pieces to the puzzle. They're independent pieces. Independently, they're very, very sad. They're incredibly sad. Israel has waited yet another opportunity to listen to a prophet from God, killed another prophet. The Romans killed him, but the blame here is left at Jewish feet, isn't it? The chief priests and the rulers handed him over to be executed. And you can just hear there's a hopelessness as they retell this story. They were hoping for redemption. We talk about redemption usually in regard to football teams that are on the bottom of the ladder. We won't mention any names here in Penrith, will we? But as they talk about redemption, they're talking about a far longer term kind of idea. The word redemption comes from the ancient slave market, where you'd go up to a slave market and you'd put down a whole bunch of money so that this slave could be released, no longer to have a master, freed. That's the kind of idea of redemption they're talking about. And what they're saying is that their whole nation feels like slaves under Roman rule. They've got Roman occupation, they're slaves to the Romans, and that's what they wanted redemption from. That's what they wanted freedom from. That is where the gloominess on Heartbreak Hill comes from. And Jesus was the guy that was meant to pull this off, but he's died. The man who said he was going to do something about everything is dead. That's why they were trudging up Heartbreak Hill. The Lion King franchise is a set of movies that just keep on giving more and more, don't they? But at the most basic level, it actually starts in a really similar way to this account that is before us, doesn't it? So you've got little Simba who he sings, "I just can't wait to be king." Right? A little cute lion singing about this, imagining a carefree, glorious future full of power and freedom. But of course, what happens? Simba's dad, Mufasa, dies, and Scar blames him, and his hopes are dashed. So little Simba has to run away, flee, and escape. This is what Cleopas is saying. We had hoped. That is, we don't hope any longer. We had hoped. We trusted in a Messiah who we thought would win through power, but he's died in weakness. The next few verses, there's a little bit of like a glimmer of hope, but it's not strong enough to pull them out of their gloominess. Apparently, there were some women went to the tomb, Jesus' tomb, saw some angels. The angels said, Jesus has risen, if you can believe that. Verse 11, the disciples thought it was nonsense. Then others went to the tomb and found that it was empty. No one can find Jesus. And so, you see, the pieces of the puzzle are there, aren't they? It's just hard to put them all together. And so, friends, that's why there's gloominess here on this walk out of Jerusalem, at Heartbreak Hill. Secondly, I just want you to see how these hopes that have been dashed are now reframed around the Old Testament. I hope you're enjoying the supreme irony as readers here. See, we know this third traveller is Jesus as we read Luke, don't we? And so we know he's the solution to this puzzle as we read this, don't we? And yet it's not clear to those who are gloomy and grumpy here as they walk. When Jesus is faced with this gloominess as he walks up and meets them, I'm a little bit surprised by his reaction. He doesn't. If I were Jesus, I might have been tempted to say, hey, Cleopas, it's me, it's Jesus, I'm Jesus, I've risen from the dead. Wouldn't you be tempted to say that? It's a bit like I'm no good at a surprise party. I can't keep a secret, right? It's me, right? I just couldn't cope any longer with their gloominess. You could fix their gloominess like that. But do you notice Jesus doesn't do that? I could also imagine Jesus getting really grumpy and angry with them. Like, I've told you guys this was going to happen. Like, I can imagine Jesus seeing their misplaced trust and saying, you know, guys, one month ago I set my mind and headed for Jerusalem. Weeks ago I wept over Jerusalem, wanting to gather you up as like a hen gathers chickens chicks under the wing. And then this week I proclaimed who I was to you, and you called for my execution. You had me strung up by Roman soldiers, and you left me there to asphyxiate. And you ask me why I don't know what happened in Jerusalem. I'm the only one that actually knows what happened in Jerusalem. I can imagine Jesus responding like that too, but he doesn't. How does he respond? What does Jesus do when he's faced with this gloominess? He doesn't give them quick relief. He doesn't give them a piece of his mind. He says this, verse 25. He said to them, how foolish are you, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? Now, it sounds a bit harsh to gloomy people, but Jesus still doesn't reveal who he is, does he? He points to the scriptures. He effectively says to them, if you want to know me, know your scriptures. The scriptures say what was going to happen to me. It's all there in black and white. Why don't you have a look at the scriptures and see? Why? Well, they don't understand that the bigger picture in the Old Testament scriptures was not necessarily about domestic Israel. It was bigger than that. The Messiah came to suffer for the sins of all people. For all people had offended God. That his suffering wasn't random. It was for others. It was a sacrifice. The Messiah didn't suffer as a victim. He suffered as a substitute for all. Let me give you an example here up on the screen. Isaiah 53 says this, verse 5, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. By his wounds we are healed. We like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. That is, the Messiah had to suffer. It's there in black and white in the Old Testament. It says so in the prophets. And so Israel could be released, not so that Israel could be released from foreign oppression, but so that people could be released from the weight of their sins, their offences against God, because he was the sacrifice. Then Jesus goes on and puts the pieces together for them. Verse 27, and beginning with Moses and the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. In verse 27, there's 21 words. I suspect it took more than 21 words, don't you? But remember, they were walking the rest of the city to serve, so they had plenty of time to talk about these things, right? Mark has mentioned to you the course that we run here at Penrith Anglican because we believe the way that you come to know who Jesus is by reading the Bible, what the Bible says about him. That's what we do at the course. And the facts haven't changed since Jesus had these conversations with Cleopas, right? And that's what they talked about. So Jesus has seen their gloominess, their trust. He's reframed their hope around the expectations of the suffering Messiah in the Old Testament. And it's only then, thirdly, after he's gone to work on their faith, that their trust is transformed by seeing Jesus. They sit down for dinner at the end of the road. The eyes of their faith get switched on. When they sat down to eat, they sat down to break bread. And Jesus had done this in front of an audience of hundreds. He'd done this just on Thursday night with an audience of 12. And now Jesus does this with an audience too. Jesus breaks bread. And importantly, Luke has brought you into this too. You're there at this meal, watching them do this. And as Jesus breaks bread, verse 31, then their eyes were opened and they recognized him. God enabled them to recognize Jesus, that he is the prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all people. He's the one that was handed over by the chief priests over to be sentenced to death. He's the one that rose from dead, and he is before them. As he breaks the bread, I imagine they can see the scars in his hands. We know how despondent they were at the start, when their hope was gone. Jesus has died, therefore the chance of Roman redemption from Rome is gone. But then this stranger helped them to piece together the puzzle, to see that actually it's about a bigger redemption. It's about freedom from sin, as explained by the Old Testament. And now you see, he's there before them, standing before them, living, having been executed by the Romans. In this book that's our gift today, the author Rebecca puts it in this way. She said, "It's not a story that can stop halfway. Christianity without the resurrection would be like Disney's Frozen without Elsa. The resurrection isn't a nice to have. It's fundamental to the Christian package." After Jesus left, verse 32, they asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked to us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" Surely seeing him has given them hope. It has restored their trust. If they are truly seeing the one that Moses and the prophets spoke about. And surely he has brought them freedom from their sins. As they head back, they tell the disciples. The disciples come to a similar conclusion as Jesus appears to others. And in verse 46, 47, the end of this gospel, what is on is the proclaiming of freedom or repentance for forgiveness of sins. That freedom that is available to anyone who turns to Jesus, trusting him, repenting of sins. There's freedom available. Friends, I started today talking about Google Maps failures, about stories of misplaced trust. Trusting financial planners and solicitors and accountants and mechanics with our futures. I said that when we trust someone, we open ourselves up to their flaws. And I guess it's true that as I ask you to trust Jesus, you're opening yourself up to his flaws. You're opening yourself up to the flaws of the eyewitnesses. And so it's natural that you have questions. And I do hope that you'll spend some time asking them, reading the book, coming along to the course. But I just want to say something else to you carefully. It's also true that if you back yourself in not believing this, you are opening yourself up to your own flaws and your own blind spots. When you trust someone who says this whole Christianity thing is untrue, you're opening yourself up to their flaws. It's worth asking, is that true? What if you needed rescue from sins but you didn't realise it? What if things between you and God weren't healthy but really unhealthy? What if you're thinking that life was secure, future was secure, when it wasn't? That would be in a very dangerous place, wouldn't it? So let me commend some investigation. Please do have a read of this, come along to the course, ask some more questions. I love that question, that gloomy question. Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days? To these two despondent travellers, Jesus doesn't lose it with them. He actually goes to work on their faith. He reframes their hope around the Old Testament, and then he transforms their faith by standing in front of them. We're going to sing now, "In Christ alone, my hope is found." As he stands in victory, sin's curse has lost its grip on me. Why don't you stand? We'll sing.